Anakin, whatever I do it to protect you. So you understand?
I understand.
I'm so happy that we can say Star Wars is good again. The Force Awakens was a fantastic way for us to be brought back into the galaxy we know and love so much, and Rogue One was a great expansion on those films. Rogue One does so much right, nailing action sequences and comedic relief with ease, but that doesn't mean it's a perfect film. It still has problems and can be constructively criticized. Let's talk about what Rogue One does well, where it stumbles, and what writers and directors should keep in mind for future Star Wars films. What does Rogue One do well? First, the movie looks and feels like Star Wars, albeit being a bit grittier. The sets, locations, the costumes were all perfect. You can't look at Jyn Erso wearing rebel garb and say it's wrong. Attention to detail was nearly impeccable. It was awesome to see the war room in the rebel base on Yavin again, feeling almost as if they had used the same one from the first Star Wars rather than recreating it. Aside from the sets, the rest of the movie is pleasing to look at due to the amazing cinematography from Greg Fraser. Each shot feels like it has been ruminated upon and carefully thought out. It's perfect for achieving the tone of the film, and also for those who will notice the beautiful attention to detail. Rogue One's sound design was also distinctively Star Wars, and this, over almost any other aspect of the film, helped to bring us back into the universe. Nearly the same thing has been utilized before. For example, look at Star Wars Battlefront. While the game lacked in variety and layered gameplay, it undeniably nailed the sights and sounds of the original masterpieces. In both Star Wars Battlefront and Rogue One, the guns sound right.
This way!
Thermal detonators sound right. And the ships sound perfect with their powerful blasts into hyperspace.
And the next.
Focus your attack on the walker.
The film also offers some of the best Star Wars action to date, yet also some of the darkest. The battles were not only interesting, meaningful, and cool, but they were also devastating. For example, when our crew is on Jeddah, they get caught in a crossfire between extremist rebels and stormtroopers. The battle breaks out quickly and stops everything on the block. What director Gareth Edwards does, though, is make a point of showing us civilian casualties, something lacking in almost every other Star Wars fight. What this does is show a darker, much more apathetic Empire. They want to take out all resistance, and if they take out civilians, that's almost better. It instills fear in those who witnessed and were spared in the fight. This is a conscious tonal decision to make a darker Star Wars film, which ends up working well. This new, darker tone makes its way to Darth Vader when he shows us his brutality. In one of the final scenes of the film, Darth Vader easily cuts his way through a squad of rebel soldiers. In the movies, this is the first time we see Vader taking down his enemies without holding back. Edwards brilliantly plays this up and treats Vader less as an action villain, but more as a horror villain. He sets the tone with lighting. The hallway is dark, cutting off one of our senses and putting us on edge. The entire mission rests on the shoulders of these rebels. If they don't get the plans out, it was all for nothing. With that, we have tension. Then, slowly out of the darkness, Vader's red lightsaber unsheathes to illuminate the room with the color of evil. Dark, loud, and terrifying music begins to play, encapsulating the rebels' fear as they watch the cause of their demise slowly make its way closer to them. For Vader, rather than quickly and discreetly discarding this interference, he shows them why he is such a force to be reckoned with. He deflects shots back into those who took them. He cuts someone in half and stabs a hole in someone and the door. It's a brilliant way to show Vader, who, due to constraints, wasn't able to be this brutal in the original films. The film isn't all perfect though, and was even able to garner some audible groans and head scratches from me. My first gripe revolves around an old playwriting theory conceived by Anton Chekhov. He described his theory entitled Chekhov's gun as such. If in the first act you have hung a pistol on the wall, then in the following it should be fired. Otherwise, don't put it there. Basically, what this means is that if you're going to mention something, it better be significant at some point. Some films use this idea by nonchalantly introducing us to a later consequential object, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones finds a snake in his plane and says,
I hate snakes, Chuck! I hate them! Come on, show a little backbone, will ya?
Keeping Chekhov's gun in mind, it makes sense to bring snakes back up later when he's dropped into the Well of Souls. In Rogue One, Saw Gerrera, an extremist rebel, interrogates our recently defected Imperial pilot named Bodhi in hopes to find enemy secrets. He tortures him with a squid-like creature able to read minds. Right before the interrogation begins, Gerrera tells Bodhi that as a result of this type of torture, one tends to lose one's mind. The next time we see Bodhi, he seems to have lost his mind. Cassian then asks if he is a pilot, and in the scene directly after, he is fine. There appears to be no sign of memory loss or other side effects. To bring back Chekhov's theory, why would Gerrera say this if it was going to be shrugged off so quickly? There was a total of maybe 5 seconds where his mind was gone, and their justification for it coming back is nearly as lame as the plot twist in Batman v Superman.
Say that name!
Stop! Please, stop!
Why did you say that name?
It's his mother's name. It's his mother's name.
This may not seem like a huge problem, and potentially even good because we weren't subjected to another film with the amnesia trope. Though, it begs the question, was this line, or scene for that matter, even necessary? Should it have been left on the cutting room floor? My guess is that they were trying to show us that Gerrera was actually an extremist, rather than your run-of-the-mill rebel. However, they could have done this in a way that would have even left more of a lasting impression. They could have shown Gerrera interrogating another prisoner and killing him when he was done. To make it even more impactful, Bodhi could have been watching and come to the realization that he was next. This would not only give us a clearer picture of Gerrera, it would cut out any inconsistency that came up early in the film. It's hard to write good characters with great arcs in a runtime of a single movie. It's possible, but with limited time, it's both hard to make your audience connect with the characters and make them layered in subtle ways. In a show like Breaking Bad, we have around 60 hours to learn who Walt is. The payoffs are sweet because we have such a good grasp on who this character is. The ending of Rogue One features payoffs that work and payoffs that don't. I also didn't feel as though I had a great grasp on who the characters were. Jin felt a bit bland, and Chirrut Imwe's character was his one repeated line. The most interesting character was Cassian due to his vague backstory and morally ambiguous tactics. He wasn't perfect though and felt a bit too similar to Han Solo. Again, it's hard to write characters that we can care about in that short of a runtime, but it is possible. I feel as though the characters felt short of being great. What I will give Rogue One credit for is giving us time to see these characters together in a variety of different scenarios. The first half of the movie is dedicated to character interactions on different planets with different objectives. However, the first half is confusing and jumps around too quickly for us to understand what is happening. Certain bits felt rushed through while others felt drawn out in the wrong moments. The film really hits its stride when the team makes it to Scarif. At this point, the editing feels near perfect, utilizing Lucas's classic 3 planes of action to great results. A muddled first act is hard to recover from, but for the most part, the movie did. However, I still left the theater with questions about what had happened in the beginning of the film. My final and biggest problem comes from Rogue One's fan service. There was a lot of it, and most of it wasn't pretty. I let out a very loud groan when R2 and C-3PO were shown for no more than a second. To me, it felt shoehorned in and utterly unnecessary. The movie would still be the exact same without it. It felt like someone was sitting next to me saying, "Remember, you love these characters." I felt the same way when Jin and Cassian ran into Ponda Baba. It felt weird and out of place. Plus, it actually created more problems. How did they get off Jeddah so quickly to make it to Tatooine? And is this galaxy really that small? The larger cameos also missed the mark. Grand Moff Tarkin had great lines and served a purpose. But while his CG was decent, we could still see the strings, so to speak. Same goes for Leia. Even though she was only in the movie for one shot, she didn't look right. As for Vader, I mentioned earlier how amazing his final scene was, but that should have been his only scene. Earlier in the film, the head of the Death Star project, Orson Krennic, meets with Vader to discuss plans and the future of the space station. Vader feels arbitrarily thrown in. Again, the film would be no different without him there. To make matters worse, on his way out, he says one of his worst lines ever. While force choking Krennic, he remarks, "Be careful not to choke on your aspirations, director." How much cooler would it have been if Vader was treated as a distant threat that people merely reference in fear? Then at the end, the film's build-up is paid off by Vader's brutal fight scene. Or if he was treated like he was in the beginning of the original trilogy, as a bit of a relic, an old guard whose glory days have passed. The Imperials only call him in at the end as a last-ditch effort, and we see that he is anything but past his prime. What scares me in terms of future films in the Star Wars Stories series is how liberally and poorly they might use fan service as a way of trying to bring people back into the universe. Quickly flashing a shot of R2 and C-3PO don't bring us in when it makes no sense for them to be there. Instead, they should bring us into the film by matching the look and sound of the original films. What they did this time only brought me out of the immersion and made me question what the purpose was for such cameos. These little nods to the audience aren't only native to Star Wars. They pop up in other new additions to existing franchises. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them does this to a fault, nearly focusing more on those references than the actual story in the film. If future Star Wars movies continue this trend, we will see worse and worse films that bank off of cheap, quick emotions like those experienced when seeing Leia or Tarkin. I still really enjoyed Rogue One. Its action was awesome and the film was beautiful to look at. We got an interesting story of this ill-fated group and Vader in his most horrific action. We got an explanation for the first Star Wars' biggest plot hole and new tone for Star Wars movies in the future. We got more Star Wars. Sure, there are issues, but this is a good start, and they can definitely get better from here.